It's The Log. I'm Charles Purcell. On this Black Friday, 54 days to inauguration, if my count is right. 54 days. Man, I wish we could shorten that. I know it used to be March, the inauguration. It used to be so much longer, but it's still too long. In other countries, it's boom, the next day, right after the election. Hand over the keys. I mean, I understand. I understand there's lots to do in a transition, but seriously, I'd like to see a little reform on that. Let's move Inauguration Day at least to, well, let's see, where could we put it? So we got the holidays right there. And we can't get in the way of Black Friday, the most important day on the American calendar. I don't know. So I read that the term Black Friday, this is just one account. I don't know what's true and what's not true. But according to one account I read, the term originated in the city of Philadelphia when the cops noticed there was quite a lot of mayhem the Friday after Thanksgiving. More traffic accidents. Things were just getting a little unruly. And they attributed that to the shoppers coming out for the first, unofficial day of Christmas shopping. So that's where the term Black Friday comes from, because of the death and destruction and mayhem. And over the decades and centuries, black has been used, the Black Plague and black this and black that, meant to indicate trouble, right? So this started to catch on, this Black Friday thing, and merchants didn't like it. Well, we don't want this negative connotation. So their PR people brilliantly tried to offset or eliminate this Black Friday thing by inventing Big Friday. No, now it's Big Friday. And of course that didn't catch on. Even for PR people, it's very hard to fight against natural inclination. It's like a nickname. You can't give yourself a nickname. It just sort of has to catch on, and people have to agree to it. Not that they sit down and declare a formal agreement. What I mean, there's a social agreement. Things have to catch on naturally. I had a friend in grade school, and it was the first day of school in the fall. Came back after the summer. I think it was maybe 5th or 6th grade. His name was Regis. And we came back to school, first day, and the teacher asks each one of us to stand up and tell the class about their summer. Just, a few brief remarks. How are you? Okay. And Regis stands up and said, well, I have an announcement to make. From now on, my name is Rex. Oh, okay. That was the oddest thing. Have a 12-year-old kid stand up and say, my name is no longer Regis, it's Rex. So, two things are funny about that. One, the fact that he would have the courage to do it. Just change his name and announce to everyone, all right, this is it. From now on, call me by my new name. But the fact that his name was Regis in the first place is kind of a funny name for a kid, which I suppose is why he wanted to change it. But the second thing that's funny about this is if you want to get rid of a funny name, why would you choose an even weirder name? Rex? What? This is, way back in the day, like 70s. So just choose a name, like, Dave or Paul or so, yeah, Black Friday. And then it wasn't until later, the Big Friday idea fizzled. That just never caught on. People insisted on calling it Black Friday. And then the PR people got together again, and kind of like the Catholic Church, right? The pagans aren't listening to us, so we better just sort of glom onto their holidays, right? And that's pretty much every holiday. Easter and Christmas and all of them. They just sort of glom onto the pagan holiday. So that's what the PR people did here. They said, okay, it's Black Friday. There's nothing we can do about it. So now black means we make a lot of money and the retailers go into the black. They make their profit for the year. So I'm sure a lot of you have heard that as the origin story for Black Friday. Well, yes, but only after a few unsuccessful attempts to do otherwise. So they said, all right, we're stuck with Black Friday. Let's just give it this story. So now it's Black Friday. And then I guess it wasn't until around 2000 or so, it really started to get a little bit crazy. It took on the negative connotation again, because now we're seeing all the crazy mayhem and people having fist fights over Cabbage Patch dolls, and it's getting a little weird. And so now Black Friday again, for many people, I wouldn't try to guess on the percentages, but for anybody in my circle, it certainly has the negative connotation again. And that doesn't even get into the whole, my whole lefty perspective on how consumption has to be eliminated as the driving force of our lives, right? So not even getting into all of that. So Black Friday for me and for my people, again, has a very negative connotation. For a lot of folks, it's still just a lot of fun, and it's a tradition. It's a family tradition. They go out. Of course, this year it's a little different, but let's not get into that. I don't even want to think about that. With all the traveling over Thanksgiving, just so disappointed in people how they did it. And they'll be out in the stores today, I'm sure. And then there was one other backlash that I only became aware of a couple of years ago. And it was one of those things where somebody comes up with an idea, and my first thought is, oh, right, of course. Why didn't I think of that? That's absolutely right. And that is this. There was some backlash about those of us who were mocking Black Friday and Black Friday shoppers. People busting down the doors and waiting in line for 2 days to get a good price on a big screen TV. So the backlash was, you know what? That's poor shaming. There are some people who need and want a TV or a washing machine or something else for their house or their family. And they rely on these crazy ass sales on Black Friday to be able to afford those things. Without these ridiculously low prices, and sometimes they are on Black Friday, these deals are amazing. Some folks just wouldn't be able to afford to have the things they need. So for us smug lefties to be making fun of Black Friday shoppers is poor shaming. And I thought, you know what? They make a pretty good point. I imagine there are quite a lot of folks that fit that description. They rely on Black Friday deals for things they otherwise couldn't afford to have at all. So, like everything else in life, it's complicated. And then, of course, after Black Friday became sort of institutionalized, I don't know the origin stories of these, but then we have Local Business Saturday, or whatever they call it, Buy Local Saturday, Cyber Monday, as the internet developed over the decades, and Monday becomes Cyber Monday. It's all about shopping, all about the Christmas season. Do they have a name for Sunday? I've never heard of a name for the Sunday after Thanksgiving. I'm surprised, actually. There's nothing. And then Giving Tuesday. You've heard of this, right? But I always kind of marvel at the order. All right, first of all, it's Black Friday. And you go to the malls and you go to the big box stores, and, we got to take care of the corporations first. They get the number one day. And then the second day, okay, now you can go to your local business. The order of things is just so odd here. Local business gets second billing. Then you got your Cyber Monday, which kind of makes no sense. It's cyber. It's in your pajamas at home on your computer. You can literally do it anytime, day or night, 365 days a year. So to designate the Monday after Thanksgiving as Cyber Monday, just marketing is such an odd thing. And then once that's all done, You got your Black Friday, you got your local Saturday, you got your something Sunday, which I don't know what, and then you got your Cyber Monday. All right, if you have any money left, if you have anything left at all, okay, now you can give it away. Now you can give to charity. It's Giving Tuesday. God forbid you put it any earlier than that. You got to make sure you spend all your money on the business first, because the business of America is business, of course. Oh, man. So I was watching a little football yesterday, and on comes a new commercial that normally, in my standard lefty non-consumer view of the world, I would be decrying this commercial. But I can't help it. It was so much fun. John Travolta as Santa Claus. Anybody happen to see this? Talking with Samuel L. Jackson in a little Pulp Fiction reunion commercial. And I can't help it. I just enjoyed it, despite all my misgivings, especially Capital One. I never quite understand why big movie stars, and Samuel L. Jackson, of course, is the big spokesperson for Capital One. Why would you do that? Do you really need the money? I would think people in that position, how much money do you need? You know, how many more swimming pools can you swim in? I never understood why celebrities, especially the really big ones, the really successful ones, would kind of lower themselves and cheapen themselves and get in bed with these evil corporations. Why would you do that? I never understood that. This particular one I enjoyed only for its creative satisfaction. It was just fun. The two of them together, all these little Pulp Fiction references. I just enjoyed it strictly on an entertainment level. And for the moment, I could forget about my deep hatred for Capital One and all they represent. So they're having this little Zoom call, and it's very cheeky and entertaining. Again, Travolta is Santa Claus in full beard and makeup and gear, and he's up at the North Pole. Mrs. Claus is hanging there with him. And like I say, there's some Pulp Fiction references. Drinking a milkshake through a straw. Jackson's wearing a t-shirt that says Happy Holidays with cheese, a la the Royale with cheese. And then in the end, Travolta gets up and does his iconic dance from Pulp Fiction. The two fingers over the eyes thing, dancing with Mrs. Claus, who was not Uma Thurman, I'm very sad to announce. See, Uma Thurman is above this. I'll bet they asked her. I'll bet they asked Uma Thurman to play Mrs. Claus. I wouldn't doubt that at all. But she wouldn't stoop to that. Yeah, in a weak moment, I couldn't help it. I just enjoyed it. It's just so kind of weird and goofy. So I confess, I enjoyed that. Hey, I'm going to share an article with you. If I haven't already, I forget if I did. I saw this a week or two ago. You know how you're going through the news, you're doing your reading for the day, you're surfing around, you're looking for interesting articles. I don't know, that's my life. And it's kind of like being an archaeologist. You can dig and dig and dig for days and weeks and months. And it's only on the rare occasion that you find something that really is interesting. It's a lot of the same old, same old. But I found a gem. Article from, I don't even know how to pronounce this, aeon.co, aeon.co. Title, Do We Send the Goo? The ability to stir new life into being all across the universe compels us to ask why life matters in the first place. This was a really interesting article, and it definitely was kind of an aha moment, slap your forehead moment. Why didn't I ever think of this? The question is not whether there is life in space. The question is now, well, should we send it out into space? This comes from an assistant professor at the University of Arizona, Betul Kakar. And she's got this idea that since life sprang here on Earth and maybe elsewhere, we don't know, from a cocktail of elements, that we could give a little assist. She writes, rather than regarding the overwhelming majority of planets and moons as failures unworthy of further study, that is in regard to creating life, we should instead recognize them for what they are. They're not empty. In fact, a very high number of them might have been, and might yet be still, on the cusp of flourishing with life, if provided the specific potential to do so. What if a significant percentage of those planets and moons require only a few hundred kilograms of the right chemical stuff to spark their own unique biotic revolutions? Here I elaborate one of many possible applications of prebiotic chemistry, protospermia, which should be debated as a technologically viable human endeavor. If humans are capable of instigating multiple origins of life under a broader array of circumstances than life currently exists, ought we to do it? Now, this is already going over my head, and this lengthy article, well, not so lengthy actually, it's a reasonable article, quickly goes over my head. But I was fascinated by it. I'm not going to make any big attempts to explain any further. I'm going to just point you to the article, tell you that it delighted me to no end to even just entertain these thoughts. And the very idea that we could send the so-called goo out into space and then let nature take its course, to me is just such a pleasant notion. Also fraught with possible bioethic concerns and, Jurassic Park kind of doomsday scenarios. But I was just so pleased that in my daily archaeological dig for news and information, I came across something that really struck me as an idea that, wow, I just never even thought of that. What a great original idea. So what do you think? Should we send the goo? My initial reaction is, let's go for it. I love the idea. Now, one of those ideas for a lot of people, I was just talking to my sister. Of course, it was the holiday, so I talked to a lot of family folks. And the idea of a universal basic income was one of those notions for her. In other words, this nugget of thought that she just never considered or heard of. So I introduced her to the idea of universal basic income a few years ago. And of course, at first thought, she, it sounded crazy. But in our conversation yesterday, she said, I've been looking more into this, and I came across an article. I'll send it to you. She's older than I am, so she's actually going to put a magazine article in the mail. Do you have older parents or brothers or sisters who still do that sort of thing? My mother used to do that, and God bless her. I mean, I really appreciated it. It was so thoughtful. And I think this is something that thoughtful parents used to do. Yeah, she'd come across an article in the newspaper or a magazine that she thought I'd be interested in. She'd clip it out and she'd mail it to me. I lived in California for many years. I packed up my van. I guess I was 20, maybe 19. Packed up my Chevy van, drove out to California, left the old homestead in Wisconsin. And all the time I was out there, my mother would send articles occasionally. So my sister is warming up to the idea of universal basic income. And then, just by sheer coincidence, or probably not, my technology was listening to our conversation. And all of a sudden in my feed now, I see a new article. Job guarantees and free money. Utopian ideas tested in Europe as the pandemic gives governments a new role. Yeah, I don't like it when editors use the word utopian in that kind of snarky style. I think what it suggests is unrealistic, dreamy idea that'll never really happen. Anyway, another good article that because of the pandemic, really sort of no choice, European nations in varying forms rolled out some universal basic income, and along with that, some more ambitious experiments. So we'll soon be seeing the results. UK, Germany, France, Spain, Italy, all have come out with some sort of government payments. Again, some just to meet the emergency needs of the pandemic, others to look more closely at some pilot projects that could have a future. So that's good to hear. Finland has been doing this for a couple of years. The initial results seem to be pretty good. Of course, I've been advocating for some sort of universal basic income forever and ever, for years and years. And to me, it was a no-brainer. As soon as the pandemic hit and we saw what was going to be happening here, so, well, okay, if you're going to have any kind of a lockdown, if you're going to ask people to stay at home, if you're going to close down businesses, you have to pay them. You can't order somebody to close and then not give them some compensation. So when the deplorables went out with their signs and railed against shutdowns, in a sense, I was actually with them, only in the sense that, yeah, if you're going to ask us to close down, you better pay our bills. In that sense, I was completely with them. And as we've said 100 times on this program, but it always bears repeating, just never believe the lies of scarcity. It's the biggest lie in the world. It's the biggest lie of them all. Scarcity is the biggest lie. There's plenty of money. There are plenty of resources. But beyond the pandemic, which served as kind of this unrelenting, revealing film close-up of the real world, where there are thousands, millions of people who suffer needlessly because of the whims of the market, because of automation, because how some professions, some jobs generate more wealth for the owners than other jobs, professions. So a left tackle on the offensive line has 1,000 times more value than a public school teacher. It's just screwy. It's just wrong. But that's what happens when everything's based on profit and when a tiny elite are making the rules. And then COVID-19 put into harsh relief here the whole notion of essential workers, which should have been obvious to all of us forever, how essential workers are. But some of us needed this slap in the face. So going forward now, if we can imagine a post-COVID world, will essential workers no longer be essential? Well, of course not. They'll always be essential. People who grow our food and get it to us. The people who climb the poles and provide our electricity. There are these people who do the actual work of allowing the rest of us to survive. Teachers, sanitation workers, nurses, so many good people doing good, honest work. None of whom deserve the precarious situation that they're all in, when this invisible hand of the market at any time for any reason can just come down and strangle you from above. So I'm happy to see that the concept of the universal basic income is being taken more seriously, is entering the mainstream. People like my older sister are seeing it in their news feeds and considering it themselves as an idea, because this kind of idea does take public consciousness and approval. I'm glad to see there are various sort of experiments going on out there, because it's not a simple, obvious program. You got to figure out how to do it, how to roll it out, the dimensions. There are certainly unintended consequences that you want to avoid, the worst of which would be rampant inflation. Well, if you just give everyone money, then prices just go up, and then you have an arms race. So there are complications to it. I'm not saying it's simple, but I'm happy to see that we're making some headway here with the idea. And I cannot imagine a future without some sort of universal basic income. I can't even imagine that future. With the precariousness of the markets and with continued automation and artificial intelligence, the whole nature of work. I'm not here to be a futurist. I'm not here to tell you exactly what it's going to look like. I don't know. But I feel very confident that universal basic income will be part of that future, for sure. And until that day comes, we do have to continue with some more traditional tactics. On the money side of the news, a couple of sort of good news stories. Amazon warehouse workers in Alabama petitioned to unionize I know Bernie Sanders is sort of following this story. He's posted about it a couple of times. This would be big. Alabama, world capital of anti-union, so-called, what do they call it? Right to work? This is some weird oxymoronic phrase that means right to get fired. Yeah, Amazon warehouse workers in Alabama have notified federal labor authorities of their plans to hold a unionization vote, teeing up a potentially groundbreaking labor battle at the retail giant known for its opposition to unionizing. Pretty good. Reading from NPR.org right now. The Bessemer, Alabama facility is one of Amazon's newer warehouses, ramped up during the pandemic online shopping surge that has pushed the retailer to record-setting profits. Oh yeah, see, that's another whole story that we could spend some time on. The profit, the massive, massive profits rolled up by a few corporations and a few billionaires due to the pandemic. Oh, this is a story that really needs to be told. Anyway, Amazon's recent hiring sprees have ballooned its global workforce past 1 million permanent and temporary staff, mainly in warehouses. Much of Amazon's workforce in Europe is represented by unions, but the company has so far successfully fought off labor organizing efforts in the U.S. Yeah, Amazon, Walmart, the big employers here in the U.S. have had great success in keeping the unions down. So, yeah, let's not just get too comfortable with relying on future so-called utopian ideas about universal basic income and how the world is going to change. We still have nuts and bolts issues to get there. I mean, I myself am guilty sometimes, and I fully admit it, of theorizing, thinking about grand solutions. And I have to remind myself every once in a while, you know what? There are real people doing real work today that make the future happen. So 3 cheers here for the workers in Alabama, in Bessemer, Alabama. Good for them. Oh, I'm looking at this article here. I mentioned Bernie Sanders. They quote him. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, a powerful union backer and longtime Amazon critic, quickly announced his support of the Bessemer workers. Quote, "If Amazon workers in Alabama, a strong anti-union state, vote to form a union, it will be a shot heard around the world," Sanders tweeted. Yeah, that's just what I was saying. "If they can negotiate higher wages and better working conditions in the South, it will benefit every worker in America." That's right. That's right, Bernie Sanders. Yep. Oh, I like the last line of this article. The worker petition news was reported earlier by the Washington Post, which is owned by Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos. Yeah, you know, I'm a very big critic of America, but the fact that this is happening and it was reported in the Washington Post, which is owned by the very owner of the company, some things just still make me very happy. A few things are working. A few things really are working. Well, tell you what, while I'm in a good mood, before I look further through my notes and find some stories that make me angry, why don't we end it there? All right. You know I love you. This is The Log. I'm Charles Bursell. Talk to you on Monday.